Thanks everyone for joining. You thought you were joining a homes guarantee call. This is the dance hall right now. No, just playing. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Maurice VP Weeks. I'm the co-executive director over at ACRE, the Action Center on Race and the Economy. So amazing to be with you all tonight on this homes guarantee call to talk a little bit about the campaign and what we can all do together to win, the housing policy that we all deserve. So many of you are ride or die. You've been with us for the last several months on these calls, and we're really, really glad to have you back. Some of you, I see some new names joining us for the first time tonight. Welcome to everyone. If you're on your computer, why don't you just drop your name and city in the chat box just so we can see who's all on and say what's up to everybody else who's on. So we have an exciting program tonight. 4 of our champions, 4 homes guarantee candidates, Dr. Jamal Bowman, Nikhil Saval, Marcella Mitanes, and Rick Krajarowski will be joining us to discuss their experiences running for office as homes guarantee candidates and to co-conspire with us about how we can continue to build power both at the local, state, and federal level. So before we get going, I want to give you a little bit about the logistics of this call. Because of how many people are on the phone, we're just cresting over 100 people on this call, which is so exciting. All of your lines are muted. If you're joining us on video, you'll be able to see the video of the panelists, but we can't see you. If you have a question during any of the presentations, in the Zoom app at the bottom, there's a question and answer. It says Q&A. You can type your chat there. We'll see them. I'll keep track of them, and we'll try and get back to them towards the end of the call after the presentation. And feel free to use the chat box to communicate with the other participants and the panelists. If you like something that somebody's saying, give them a hell yeah in the chat box, and we'll be paying attention to that too. If you have any tech difficulties anytime during the call, you can shoot an email over to homes@peoplesaction.org. And if you're not on Zoom, you just dialed in through the phone like a lot of folks have, that's all right. We're very, very glad you're here and excited that you can listen in to us tonight. So we also have simultaneous Spanish language interpretation for this call. If you want to switch over to the Spanish line, you can click the button that's at the bottom of the screen that says interpretation. It should have just appeared. You can change it from English to Spanish. If you dialed in by phone and you need interpretation, unfortunately, it's with the Zoom app, it's only available through the computer. So if you're able to get to a computer or a smartphone, you can get it that way. And we're very sorry if not. We're trying to get Zoom to change that. And just so you know, we're recording this call to share with people who aren't able to join us tonight. We don't intend for this to be a media call, but obviously the call is open and public, so folks should assume that they're on the record when talking. Finally, this call is going to be slightly longer than our normal calls to make sure we have time to dig in with all of our guests, but we should be able to wrap up by 9 East Coast time, 6 West Coast time. So I'm going to get out of the way. We've got so many great speakers. I'm so excited to get into it. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Sterling Johnson, who's a grassroots leader with Philadelphia Housing Action.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, People's Action, for having me. My name is Sterling Johnson. I'm a community lawyer and organizer with the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative, but we formed this little coalition called the Philadelphia Housing Action. We've been working closely with a protest encampment of about 200 unhoused people that are located in downtown Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a powerful legacy of people taking over space and building community in vacant properties. This protest was deliberately put in a very public place, right in front of the Art Museum, and in front of an apartment building where the rents run about $5,000 per month. So I have a deep personal stake in guaranteeing permanent low-income housing for unhoused folks. As a as a queer person, as a disabled person, as a Black person, as a person that has been unstably housed. So that's why I work so hard for people in this city. And we have 40,000 vacant units. A lot of them are publicly owned, and there's no reason that everyone should not be housed in a place where there's so many vacant, viable properties. We need to liberate this, and we do it for the people. I've been in the encampment working with people of all walks of life that have been displaced through the housing market and gentrification and displacement. The city in general, we've been there for about 6 weeks. The city has attempted to kick us out on July 17th. As I am speaking now, apparently that didn't happen. So that was a win for us through our advocacy as I continue to remind them that they have policies for unhoused people, they have rules that they have to follow, and they also had a quagmire that they didn't want to become a part of. So I can say throughout this period, we've opened up other spaces for in the city. We've passed an eviction moratorium, legislation to make illegal lockouts more illegal, eviction diversion program with some money behind it will be coming soon too. And then we started a real conversation about rent control, started a real conversation about making a system of community land trusts that keeps the land permanently low income, permanently affordable, even after I die, you die, everyone dies. We want low income people, no income people to be able to live in the city. And like part of our larger vision is changing the nature of home ownership and stewardship, land stewardship in the city of Philadelphia. We like to ensure that the Housing Authority and the Land Bank are holding, and all those properties, right, that they own, that those are city-owned properties for people that are not from Philadelphia. Those are all public properties and they belong to us, and we need to liberate them. So we're going to ensure that happens. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Sterling. My name is John Washington. I'm an organizer with the National Campaign to Win a Homes Guarantee. And I want to offer everyone some thoughts tonight to ground us before we dig in. First, on the state of the housing crisis and the pandemic, we are 5 months deep into a pandemic that has harmed our communities and exposed the truth that many of us are driven by, that our housing system was created to make profits for the wealthy and pain and trauma for the rest of us. In June, 30% of Americans were unable to make their housing payment. Over 16 million renter households are unable to pay rent and at risk of eviction across the country. It's clear that our racist and capitalist housing system has failed us, and it's endangering the lives of our loved ones. We also can see that it's being set up for financiers to buy back up the pieces when this is over. No national legislation has been passed to protect tenants, and the CARES benefits are about to expire. Despite this, federal legislators and policymakers have failed to provide any meaningful protection or relief for tenants. In places like Milwaukee and Kansas City, local moratoriums on evictions have already ended and are disproportionately forcing Black and Latinx families to defend themselves against eviction filings. Of course, in other places, there wasn't a moratorium to begin with. With the CARES Act and expanded unemployment benefits expiring on July 31st, millions of people and families across the country face the very real threat of eviction. Election soon, the opportunity to change the balance of power. So while the federal government has failed to take action and protect tenants from the looming eviction crisis in a meaningful way, despite the demands from grassroots leaders like us across the country, we have an opportunity to shift the balance of power in local, state, and federal races this November by electing people, like the ones we're going to see soon, who are committed to ensuring that housing is a human right and not a means to profit. Now I'm going to pass it off to my comrade Divya to discuss what it means to be a Homes Guarantee candidate.
Hey everyone, my name is Divya Sundaram and I'm an organizer with Community Voices Heard in New York. Our sister organization, Community Voices Heard Power, was really proud to endorse Jamal Bowman for his primary and help push him to victory. And my Jamal shirt came in just in time today, so I'm excited about that too. We're so excited to have I'm just excited. I keep using that word, sorry. But we are really excited to have so many new people joining us on the call tonight. And we want to take a moment to talk about just what a Homes Guarantee is for those who haven't joined us before. The Homes Guarantee is a framework for how we decommodify housing to ensure that housing really is a human right. It's pretty simple. We believe that in the richest country in the world, everyone should be guaranteed safe, healthy, and permanently affordable housing. The Homes Guarantee calls for the construction of 12 million units of social housing, deep investment in public housing, finding an end to homelessness, reparations for centuries of racist housing policies, and the expansion of tenant protections to create a housing system that truly puts people over profits. And the best part of the Homes Guarantee? It comes straight from the people. This vision was crafted by grassroots leaders from across the nation because we know that the people closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. And we know that to turn the Homes Guarantee from a vision into reality, we need some really strong allies in elected office who will co-govern with us. We're all about building shared power, and we're gonna hold y'all accountable to that. So last year, we started recruiting candidates to run on a Homes Guarantee platform. And we've gotten over 120 candidates in less than a year to running for local, state, and federal office from all parts of the country to take the Homes Guarantee candidate pledge. We even got a presidential candidate to sign. Much love to our uncle, Bernie Sanders. By taking the pledge, these candidates committed to advancing policies that move housing from a commodity to a human right, running a campaign that is accountable to local tenants, and rejecting any developer and real estate contributions. And that's big. Even just last year, it was not the progressive norm to turn down real estate money. So from New York and Pennsylvania to Kentucky and Missouri, and all the way out west to Washington and California, candidates are taking this pledge because they know the Homes Guarantee is the gold standard for housing policy. Our candidates are people who grew up in public housing, they may have struggled with homelessness, they are housing organizers who've helped build the movement and are representative of the movement. And so tonight, you're gonna hear from some folks who've shown that Homes Guarantee candidates win. You can read the full Homes Guarantee candidate pledge and see if there are any Homes Guarantee candidates running for office in your community at homesguarantee.com/pledge. The link is being dropped in the chat as well. Tonight, we are so excited to have some of the most exciting Homes Guarantee candidates in the country join us for a Q&A panel. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Tara, who is gonna introduce our very special guest.
All right, thank you, Divya. When you said that website, I was like, dang, this girl needs to be on like voiceovers on commercials. That sounded really official. homesguarantee.com/pledge. Check it out. I am so excited to be here tonight. My name is Tara. I'm an organizer with the Homes Guarantee campaign at People's Action, and I also organize with a badass group of tenants in Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm calling in from tonight. Shout out to the KC tenants on the line. I'm going to be facilitating the introductions with our incredible panel of Homes Guarantee candidates this evening. But first, I just want to start out by saying thank you to Jamal, Nikhil, Marcella, who's still on her way, and Rick for taking the time to join us and for running truly visionary and groundbreaking campaigns. From the jump, these four have been down with the Homes Guarantee vision, down to organize with grassroots leaders, down to be accountable to the people who are the most impacted by these problems. And all of them have been fighters for these types of visions, actually since way before they became candidates, right? Every single person on this panel has been a fighter aligned with us and a comrade of ours since way before they were a candidate for public office. So I just want to take a second to say thank you. I feel so grateful to have you in this space with our grassroots leaders. We use the acronym GOAT a lot around here, greatest of all time. I feel like we are about to hear from a panel of the GOATs. So I'm super excited that you all took the time to join us tonight. And we want to start actually by giving all of our candidates a few minutes, 4 to be exact, to just introduce themselves to our grassroots leaders and our call attendees. And we're all organizers here. This is a movement space, so we don't want your normal stump speech. Hopefully that's clear by now. We want you to tell us what office you're seeking, why, but also, and most importantly, tell us why you give a damn about a homes guarantee. We want to know about your personal stake in our collective work together. So we're going to start out with Nikhil Saval from Pennsylvania. Let's hear it.
Thanks so much, Tara. Thank you, everyone. I'm just so proud to be on this call with such visionary leaders and organizers, and thank you to the Homes Guarantee team in particular for organizing this call. The Homes Guarantee Thursdays, the work you did putting out brilliant work. I just would not have been able to succeed, and we would not have been able to succeed in our primary without your inspiration. So again, I'm Nikhil Saval. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an editor, writer, and community organizer, and I'm the Democratic nominee for state Senate in the 1st Senate District in Philadelphia. And for those of you who are not from Philadelphia or don't know the city, it's comprised mainly of the city's central business district and much of South Philadelphia. It's the source of much of the city's growth, but also much of its inequality. It's burgeoning with new commercial real estate, luxury hotels, and condominiums in the downtown, and also with new immigrants and refugees in South Philadelphia from Latin America and Southeast Asia, who are struggling with rent burdens, home repairs, ICE agents, and illegal evictions. Under the incumbent state senator, who was here for 12 years, has been in this district for 12 years, $1 billion has come to the district in state grant money. Most of that money has gone to building the downtown that many people have seen in the city, the skyline. $25 million went in a single year, for example, to help build Comcast, a second high-rise tower. Only $14 million went in 12 years to affordable housing. So $25 million in a single year in a grant for Comcast, $14 million over 12 years to affordable housing. And we see the results. As Sterling mentioned, the Philadelphia Art Museum, which is built by the city's earliest Black architect, Julian Abele, with its famous steps and now fronts a burgeoning encampment of the unhoused. The district is also bordered by 2 rivers, and much of where the new waterfront condominiums are planned are going to be underwater in 100 years without climate mitigation. The homes in our district are crisscrossed by invisible but palpable school catchment lines and red lines, encircled by state and federal opportunity zones. 125,000 Philadelphians pay over half their income in home ownership costs or rent. I'm the child of immigrants from South India, and I lost my home when landlords sold the building where my parents ran a pizza restaurant, and they moved back to India to save their finances, ending for a time their dream of building a home in the United States. In 2006, the mere threat of luxury development pushed me out of my first apartment. For the earliest years of my life as a renter, I did not know stability. I was not sure where I would live or where I could ever stay. And I fight for a homes guarantee with the memory of that instability in my bones. I fight for it because housing is a guarantee, as we've said, of reparations. Reparations, it's for redlining that kept Black and brown Americans out of housing, and also for the years of predatory inclusion that trapped so many Black and brown Americans into substandard housing in the years that followed. But housing should also be a guarantee of our future. We need millions of units of green social housing to ensure air we can breathe and that a rising river line does not devour us. In our campaign, we campaigned on building 1 million units, building, preserving, or converting 1 million units of social housing, preserving the housing that we have, expanding the housing where it exists, and building new units. We had 25,000 vacant homes in Philadelphia. We estimated that could provide housing for 125,000 people in the city. And I hope as a state senator to govern together with our movements for housing justice, to expand out our renter protections and affordable housing in forms of permanently affordable housing, like community land trusts and union co-ops. And I hope as a state senator to co-govern with our movements to cancel rent and mortgages for the duration of our crisis. And I hope to work with everyone on this call to deliver the liberation our communities need. I came to this call filled with those hopes, and I'm already sure to leave with those hopes renewed and restored by everyone's leadership, commitment, and guts. So thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nikhil. I got goosebumps when you said, I am the Democratic nominee. That is so awesome. Let's turn it now over to your comrade, also from the great state of Pennsylvania, Rick Krajewski. Could you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. Always a hard act to follow, Nikhil Saval, my fellow colleague. Also want to echo thank you for all of you for the work that you do to create this space, to create this agenda. I'm humbled to be a part of it. My name is Rick Krajewski. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a community organizer, and I am also a Democratic nominee for state representative in the 188th district of the PA House. It includes West and Southwest Philadelphia. Folks may know it as the birthplace of the Fresh Prince, of the Black Panthers. The chapter in Philly was in West Philly, and also American Bandstand. So we have a lot of culture in the district that I am representing, and I'm thrilled to be able to represent it, and I'm thrilled to talk about why I'm invested in a homes guarantee. Because when I think about a homes guarantee, to me, it's not only about guaranteeing that you have a home, but that you will be able to stay in your home. And that's important for me because I grew up in the South Bronx, actually. And I grew up in a single income household. I moved around very frequently between the ages of 6 and 14. I moved about 5 times. And moving wasn't dictated by space or by community, it was by what we could afford. And as a result of that, I struggled to ever feel secure in my physical home, in a physical dwelling, because I always assumed that in a couple of years I would be gone and would have to go on to the next space. And so I've been grateful to find a place where I finally felt home in West Philadelphia, in a place I've lived in my whole adult life. However, the community that I am representing and that I care and love for so deeply is under threat by greedy developers and unaccountable institutions that are eager to drive up property values, sacrificing working class Black and brown renters and homeowners in the process. In my time in my district, I've seen elders grifted out of their family homes, taking their only source of Black wealth, generational Black wealth. I saw a high school, and a historic high school, West Philadelphia High School, closed and turned into flimsy, unsafe luxury condos, and a 130-year-old church shoddily replaced by a 278 apartment unit complex. In the face of all this, we have seen a complete inability and unwilling to hold these actors accountable. And this constant state of change in pursuit of capital, where our dwellings and our landmarks can be taken away from us at a moment's notice, to me, that is blind, naked, clear structural oppression. That is racial oppression, that is economic oppression. And it is a kind of oppression that is keeping us from actually thinking about a way of like transforming this world, right? How can we rise up to combat the forces of racism, of capitalism, and patriarchy when we're too preoccupied with covering rent? We're too preoccupied with trying to cover our property taxes. So being clear about the stakes and what's at stake for us when it comes to the platform. And what excites me the most about it is that it's more than just a set of policies. It's actually a vision for a new form of housing. Housing that is compassionate, housing that is healthy, housing that is not only affordable, but actually interrogates why we attach a price tag to housing in the first place. It is a declaration that housing is a human right. And I am so humbled to play a part in making it a reality by being a champion for the issues of investing in public housing, investing in affordable housing, investing in policies like rent control, and to even echo something I saw Tara put in the chat, to actually liberate the land and to reclaim the land that we deserve to own, deserve to take up space in, deserve to feel secure in. So I'm really grateful to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to today and the work that's ahead of us. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rick. And actually the credit for that comment about liberating the land goes to our comrade Sterling, who had to jump off the call. But I don't know if y'all understood, Sterling is part of an encampment, one of the most historic encampments in history in Philadelphia right now. And I wrongly described him as an occupier. And he was like, no. What we're not doing is occupying the land. What we're doing is liberating the land and bringing the land back to the people who deserve every piece of it. And so that was a really useful agitation to me, and I appreciate you bringing it back, Rick. Now I want to turn it over To another comrade, welcome, Marcella. It's so good to have you here and so exciting to see a fighter for tenant rights get elected or have a major win in the last couple of weeks. So you have about 4 minutes and we want to hear about you. A little bit of stump speech is cool, but mostly we want to hear about your personal stake in a homes guarantee and why you found it important to center this in your platform.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm an immigrant from Peru that came here as an infant, and I moved to Sunset Park, Brooklyn at the age of 5, into a 2-bedroom rent-stabilized apartment. Like many immigrants, my family started calling the rest of the family, and they relocated here, shared the 2-bedroom rent-stabilized apartment with us until they were able to become independent and on their own. In 2006, I got a new landlord. And within 6 months, he was able to evict half of the families of the 35-unit building that I lived in. And, you know, I ended up being evicted and losing the home that I had shared with my family for over 30 years. Not understanding what was happening, not knowing why this was happening. It became clear that the laws that existed really helped landlords and not tenants. Understanding how politics has a big hold on our politicians, and understanding why legislation hasn't been able to be passed. I then connected with a group called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and they had a tenant group that they were organizing. And, you know, I was able to find the group as a support group. Something that we're not talking about is the trauma that's inflicted on us, on our families, on our elders, on our children, for being displaced. And so after organizing with them for a year, I was able to transition from participant to a staffer. And I've been working in my community since then, educating tenants on their rights, building leadership skills, and plugging them into local, city, state, and federal campaigns. It's been 10 years of going up to Albany and losing, but it was very satisfying when we got the historic rent laws in June of 2019. For me, being displaced from my 2-bedroom rent-stabilized apartment in 2006, and I was paying like $630 to move 2 blocks to another 2-bedroom apartment, to then start paying $1,400, that's something else folks aren't talking about. When you lose that stability, when you lose that affordable home, you are thrown back into the market rate. And it's very difficult to manage and maintain. I relocated. I'm living on the 2nd floor of a 2-family house, and the landlord lives on the 1st floor. And I am now an unregulated tenant, no lease, and no protections against evictions. So despite the historic rent laws that we won last year, you know, it was a bittersweet victory. And one of the reasons in me wanting to run was because I was tired of my representative giving us excuses as to why these bills would not pass. Telling us things like now isn't the time, telling us things like, oh, those laws don't expire till next year, we'll take that up next year, telling us we don't understand the way Albany works. The truth is, we need to have representation that's going to fight for the people. And as a working class woman, a woman of color, I want to be able to bring those voices to Albany with me. One of the reasons that I decided to run was because at the state level, I would be able to help so many more people by passing legislation. And so that's been really the main reason in me wanting to run. And I'm so happy and so proud to be here and to be with the movement. And I'm super excited to get things done.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marcella. Last but certainly not least, Jamal Bowman, champion for a homes guarantee. What is your stake in this fight? What's your personal connection? Let's hear it.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to the whole Homes Guarantee crew for all the organizing and all the work you've put in. I'm here because we live in a country where Jeff Bezos made $13 billion in one day, where we have a pandemic that's killed over 140,000 people, while the millionaire and billionaire class has grown. Right here in New York City, those billions have grown by $77 billion. Yet in my district, we need 70,000 affordable homes. And across the country, when you look at who's housing insecure and who's homeless, the people are disproportionately Black and brown. And my personal experience is living in the projects. I lived in the projects as a kid. I also lived in rent stabilized apartments. And literally the stabilization of that apartment kept me on the straight and narrow, kept me in decent public schools, kept me in a decent community, and kept me from not going too far to the left where many of my friends got caught up in the crack cocaine epidemic. So rent stabilization was key for me. Unfortunately, after 30 years, when the state law ran out, my mother, who had lived in that apartment for 30 years, could no longer afford the rent because it was now market rate and had to move. She had the community was gentrifying. She had to move from a 2-bedroom to a studio apartment in the South Bronx, which was also being gentrified. Also, as a middle school principal, I can't tell you how heartbreaking it is when a parent comes into your office with their children to tell them that they have just lost their apartment. And now they have to move to a shelter that's not even near the school, that's somewhere in Queens, where they now have to figure out how to travel from Queens to the Bronx to get their child to school. And this is happening over and over and over again in a country where we beat our chests and say we're the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. But we still have tens of millions of people living in poverty. And right here in Yonkers, within Westchester County, Yonkers has 50% of the homeless population of the entire county. So poverty is by political design. It's a choice. It is not something we can't get ourselves out of, right? It is not, housing is not something we cannot provide to every living person on this planet. It's not a matter of resources. We have the resources. It's a matter of will, and it's a matter of values. So in support of Ilhan Omar's Homes Guarantee, investing $1 trillion over the next 10 years to build 12 million new social housing units where people have part ownership of their home, of their land, and of their community. That's what I've been fighting for throughout this campaign. And people leaned into it and were excited by it, which is why we were able to triple voter turnout overall, triple turnout amongst young people, and triple turnout amongst people of color. That happened because people were excited by the overall platform, but particularly the Homes Guarantee aspect of the platform. Housing is a human right. To quote my homegirl, Yulin, housing is healthcare. And I'm glad Marcella spoke about the trauma of housing insecurity. When you're dealing with that level of stress and trauma, you cannot concentrate in school, and it will impact your education, health, and economic outcomes. So that's my story. That's why I'm here. I can't wait to take this fight to Washington, and let's get it done.
We cannot wait until you are in Washington. That is amazing. And one thing that I just want to point out before we dig in with more questions is every single one of these panelists has been directly impacted by this issue in some way or another. Every single one of them has dealt with some of the experiences that are shared by grassroots leaders who are joining this call from all over the country. And this matters, right? I think something that has agitated me so much in the last couple months is realizing with such intense clarity that the reason that things aren't happening in Congress, exactly to Jamal's point, is that the people in Congress are wealthy. They're millionaires. They have no idea what it's like to live the life that any of you all just described, right? There's such a massive disconnect. But the other thing I want to point out is like, all of y'all are not only impacted, and that matters and that shapes your perspective, you're also dreamers, right? All of you have this imagination of a better world and the world as it should be, which is so critical to you being movement politicians and people who, when you're elected, will be imaginative and bring your creativity to the job every day. So I want to thank you for all of that. And with all of that being said, now we're going to start some questions. And this is going to be a little bit more informal. So some of my comrades here have questions prepped. They're going to ask you to answer the questions. Whoever wants in, jump in. We'll keep going as long as we can. And then all the rest of you who are joining as participants, put your questions in the Q&A box. And when we see some really interesting questions there for the candidates, we'll start pulling those out from the chat as well. Okay? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my comrade Maurice with the first question.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks again to all the speakers. Really wonderful. So the first question I have for y'all, what would the community that you are running to represent look like if there was actually a homes guarantee? Tara was talking about how you all are dreamers, have a political imagination. What would the community look like with a homes guarantee?
I'll jump in if y'all don't mind, and trust me, I'm not trying to hog up the mic space, but I'm very excited by this question. It would look like Wakanda. That's what it would look like. So it's not only about, bringing in the resources for someone else to come in and build the homes for our community. It's about us building our own community up. It's about bringing the resources to the people and allowing them to use their innovation and creativity to build the homes that we need. But again, when you have that level of security, your mind is released of the stress and trauma that you had when you were dealing with housing security. And when your mind is released of that stress and trauma, you could be more innovative within your community overall. So we're talking about small business development. We're talking about more innovative schools. We're talking about dealing with issues of climate change. It's like you're liberated from the stress that you had when you were dealing with housing insecurity. And through that liberation, we're going to build Wakanda.
I love it. I love it. Other folks want to jump in on that one?
I'll take the brave task of following up from Jamal. I do want to piggyback off of something Jamal said, which is that, or a reference, which is that to me, a homes guarantee is actually about shifting the balance of power between community, between people and developers, institutions, right? The things that profit off of people. So in my districts, I have 3 universities. It's Drexel University, University of Pennsylvania, and the University of the Sciences. UPenn is the largest landlord and developer in my district. It is constantly extracting resources, buying up properties, creating policies that incentivizes its workers and the people within its footprint at the cost of homeowners, of existing community members. And this is the cycle of oppression, the cycle of divestment, of taking away wealth, the ability to hold on to wealth, to hold on to property from the existing community. So to me, what a homes guarantee would mean would be actually to dismantle those institutions, to dismantle the power that they hold and the colonizer relationship that they actually have in my district, and to bring that agency, to bring that ability back to the people. What would it look like to have homes guarantees that are rooted in community benefit agreements, that are rooted in these policies that guarantee that all of those people have homes, that they have access to affordable housing, to public housing, and to eventually abolish the relationship that those institutions have to my district. I don't believe an institution like Penn should exist where it can purchase all of these properties and use them for its own benefit and not for the benefit of the people. So when I think about what a homes guarantee would mean, it means transformation. It means transforming the way that people exist, the way they relate to their housing, and the way that these institutions that exist currently are going to be abolished because that power comes back to people. So.
Yeah, if I could jump into with New York State and the largest numbers of homelessness, if everyone had a home, we might actually be able to have a better hold on this pandemic. And it's just as simple as that. How are we supposed to ask people to quarantine if they don't have a home?
Marcel, I think you might have gone on mute there right at the end. We heard, how are people supposed to quarantine if they don't have a home?
Yeah, I finished. It was simple and short. Sorry.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm with you 100%. I'm going to turn it over for our next question to Abby. Abby, are you there?
Hi. Hi, my name is Abby Job. I'm a resident of the Bronx and a future constituent of Jamal Bowman. I'm also a member of Community Voices Heard, Youth Alliance Housing. My question is, how do you plan to co-govern and build shared power with Homes Guarantee grassroots leaders, including youth leaders if elected into office?
Nikhil, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I just want to say that this is, for me, this is one of the reasons that I maybe even had the courage to, or the wherewithal to run for office, is the notion that I could co-govern, that there would be movements. I think people think that, you know, part of it is just not just that you want people to hold you accountable, which you do, but you also need license, and you need license to dream, and you need people to back you up, and that's where the ideas come from. So part of what I hope to have in mind, and I think there are models of this. I was very inspired to run also by what has been happening in New York State, which Marcella mentioned, and that was a huge. But the idea of having people who are committed to housing justice to meet with monthly, semi-monthly, like a housing roundtable, who are people in the district, people who are the most impacted, who then are tenants' rights organizers, who are tenants, who are you know, fighting to just pay for home repairs, just the basic facts of just that affect everyone day in and day out when they have housing instability, and to generate our ideas and our legislation, but from that, to generate ideas from that table, from that group of people. Because they have the ideas. The people who are organizing day in and day out have the ideas. Ideas come from movements, and not only that, but also know exactly what is happening, you know, on a day-to-day level. So, you know, I would hope that members of the housing campaign are part of that roundtable, are leading the effort to change how the Philadelphia Housing Authority works, how to pass rent stabilization across Pennsylvania, how to convert existing units into social, green, affordable housing. So I would imagine that it's something where, you know, I think the ideas have come from people who come from movements, and that's where they're going to continue to come from.
Jamal, how are you going to be accountable to Abby, your future constituent and a resident in your district?
You know, great question. So I had a conversation yesterday about a tenant who's being harassed by her landlord and the management company that manages her building. And the first thing I did was contact someone from Community Voices Heard. So that's how I see the communication and the trajectory of communication throughout the time I'm in office. And it's similar to the work that I was able to do in education. You know, my education organizing was all about working with the grassroots and pushing back against the state and national government, federal government, to make sure we had equitable resources for our kids, to make sure standardized testing wasn't overused, to make sure we had culturally responsive schools, et cetera, et cetera. So my entire career has been working with grassroots organizations and to focus on building affordable housing, rent stabilization. The big landlords they don't care about that. They're all about profit. They don't care about ending homelessness. They're all about profit. So for me, it's about working with Homes Guarantee Crew, NYCC, Community Voices Heard, and others, as well as local elected officials, to have conversations to begin to shift their thinking as well, because oftentimes they think they need to go to the developers because they're thinking about market rate and development while ignoring the needs of the people throughout the district. So I'm just going to continue the work I did in education.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's been really amazing to see the work of our youth. Certainly here in Sunset Park, we're also trying to make sure that we're giving spaces to the kids. You know, when I got displaced from my home, my daughter was 8 and I had to sit down and have a conversation about what it meant. And similarly, we have children that are witnessing the harassment that's being inflicted on their parents by the property owners, the housing insecurities, the issues with repairs. And so it's also an opportunity to give them to kind of like share their stories and help others. But for the years that I've been working as an organizer in a community, it's been beautiful to see examples in other areas where there's an important working relationship between the elected official and the people in the community. That's also one of the reasons I decided to run. There isn't that partnership. And so the way I see it is it's the elected official's job to be on the inside pushing and working with the people on the outside that are pushing as well.
Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought the youth angle to it in particular. Because I'll just say for myself, being a young Black man that decided to enter the political process and decided to bring an organizing lens to the political process, there are many rooms where I feel very lonely, where people that share my values or share my identities are not being represented. And so I'm invested in co-governance because to me that is how we start to change that dynamic, right? Like I want to have more young people involved in the political process. I want more young leaders to be fluent in politics, to be fluent about the fact that these people are making decisions about our lives every day, and we have no seat at the table. So co-governance is important to me because to me it is the future of developing like young leadership. And also, this doesn't work without co-governance. Me and Nikhil are entering a place that largely does not align with our values. We need, like, we're going to be in there legislating, we're going to be in there lobbying, we're going to be in there doing the diplomacy necessary to get our stuff done. But we need to have the movement around us, outside of us, to create the tension, to pull the direct actions necessary, to construct the narrative and platforms necessary so that we can actually like win this shit. Like this project, this vision does not happen if we are not being accountable to y'all. And also if we're not talking and communicating about what we need to put the public pressure to actually win all of our demands.
It is really so exciting to hear Homes Guarantee candidates speaking this way, to see that Afrofuturism will be coming to Congress. But I want to know, everything is organizing, right? So when you get in office, how are you all going to organize other elected officials in your community and in the spaces that you're stepping into to move housing from a commodity to a human right?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. So, you know, we have a general election in November. There's currently not a Republican challenger, so I'm running on the poll. So hopefully I'll be able to win that. So that work has already begun in terms of organizing others from afar. So I'm already in conversations with people on the Hill around, you know, my priorities, my vision, and looking for allies based on their voting record and based on their value system that they share with me, in alignment with not just a homes guarantee, but in alignment for justice, racial and economic justice in all its forms. It's also happening at a local level. So right now I'm meeting with mayors, state senators, state assembly members, county members to begin to have conversations around a vision for housing in this district. We need 70,000 affordable homes, bottom line. How do we get 70,000 affordable homes as quickly as possible? And how do we end homelessness in this district? That's the conversation. That's where I'm starting the conversation. And I'm seeing where they are, we find the middle ground, and then we get things moving. So that work is beginning now, and we'll see where it goes. But so far, so good in terms of the conversations I'm having early.
You know, I'll just follow that. I mean, it's a similar picture in the sense of, you know, I also don't face a challenger in November, but so a lot of my work is the legislature in both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate is Republican controlled. I mean, that's not the only obstacle to this bill. I mean, if it were Democrat controlled, it might still also be problem, but I think you know, so part of it is also is building allies and trying to flip seats, but have actually leaders in those districts who care about the same issues. But the other thing is just organizing people around a common vision in the state of what housing is, and obviously it may seem that it looks different in Philadelphia and elsewhere, but a third of the state consists of renters, and not all those renters are concentrated in the major cities. Many people across the state face issues with just home repairs, face issues with just being able to stay in their homes because they're underwater with their mortgages. And you know, the other thing is that Pennsylvania is an extractive state. It is a state in which many of our houses are powered by natural gas. We need to connect our housing to our green initiatives. We need to get gas out of our homes. We need to green our housing. So we also need to talk about the ways in which all of this is going to produce a better society, a healthier society, a society in which our homes are not contributing to our emissions, in which people are not getting sick from their homes, in which their homes are not drains on their lives, but in other ways, places where they can thrive. And so I think that's something that we can organize a lot of people around across the state and have a united vision for a homes guarantee that is rural as well as metropolitan, is and I think that's is green as well as affordable. So I think that's a vision that can unite a lot of people across the state.
Yeah, I can follow up off of that. I think when it comes to building the support, I go back to two of the things that we're really good at. I mean, one organizing, but also building the block necessary for our demands and for our issues. How do we make sure that next time we're hitting a cycle, it's not just me and Nikhil, it's me and Nikhil and 2 other people from Pennsylvania, and then make that 8, and then make that 16. How do we use the fact that we have out-organized the establishment in every arena to continue to have conversations about a homes guarantee, about what it means to fight for affordable housing, for green social housing, like Nikhil said. I think it's about going back to our bread and butter of having real conversations with folks, getting them invested in politicizing the issues, and then thinking about how do we utilize that base to create support for our demands. Nikhil's district is half of Philadelphia, and he ran as an openly Democratic socialist on a homes guarantee. I took out a 35-year incumbent on a clear, bold leftist platform. We did this because we had conversations, we organized, we canvassed, we built a base. We'd have to think about, now that we have this power and we've been able to win these primaries, what is the next step with that base to actually build relationships, but also move narrative?
Maybe move to the next question from Abby.
All right. What was your greatest challenge in running on a homes guarantee, or what do you think will be your greatest challenge in advancing these policies once elected?
Which of you got in a fight with a developer? We want to hear all the tea. Spill it.
Not a fight with the developer, but there's definitely a bunch of landlords in Sunset Park that are not happy with me. Yeah.
I have one. There was actually an article where a local developer who is considers himself a progressive developer, which obviously is a contradiction in itself, sent me an email taking issue with the fact that I used the word landlord, literally just the word landlord, and that I used to describe that. I said that Penn and other larger developers are lords of land. They hoard land and they take it away from people. And he was like, oh, but I'm a small mom and pop developer. I'm not one of those big landlords. Why would you they're good. They're good guys out there. They're good people out there. And my response was it is true. It is. I'm not exaggerating here. They are hoarding land. They are actually creating fiefdoms of land. If you actually want to be a good person and a good actor, how about you come to the table with me to think about how we start to redistribute some of these properties and some of these apartments versus just being offended that I was calling it for what it is. So I think that's going to be one of the big challenges I'm going to have in my district is calling out the issues for what they are and calling out the trends for what they are, and not dealing with people that are but I'm one of the good ones. I'm a good developer. I'm actually trying to do the right thing when they really aren't. So.
Nikhil, did you have similar challenges when you were running on a homes guarantee?
So I have just on this issue in a kind of broad sense, every developer in the city, pretty much every developer in the city supported my opponent, the incumbent. It was actually, I just have to say, it was one of the most sublime experiences of my life to look at the list of people who contributed to his campaign. It was just, intuitively, I don't know, I presume other people have had this experience, but then you see all the names and you're like, oh, whoa, like that's like, I'm going up against the entire developer ruling class of the city, and they have a lot of money. I mean, because I could see it. There are no limits on contributions. So this is like $10,000 contributions, one after the other. And well, so they lost. So that's a good sign. They can be beaten. But you know, part of it is that we have, I mean, the interesting problem is that our district comprises the downtown. So where most of the development, not just in Philadelphia, but in the state takes place. And so the interesting problem that we face is we are trying to take control of that capital, and people know that. I campaigned explicitly on the fact that we need that capital for affordable housing. We need it for green infrastructure. We need it, like that's where we should be redirecting it. And so figuring out how to take capital and invest it in the long-term sustainability of what we're trying to do and build a homes guarantee. I mean, I had just as a conversation in terms of what developers are fearing, the Philadelphia 76ers are in the district. They had a plan, and apparently they reached out through an intermediary, and they were like, who's this new state senator? We have a development plan in this district. Is it in trouble? Like, I mean, I think that was their question. And like this, so there is a lot of fear. And so like both trying to advancing our positive goals at the same time that we know we're going to be fought as we were fought in this campaign tooth and nail to keep that capital where it's going, and instead of investing it in our communities. That's going to be the big challenge.
So one thing I did face while I was running was this idea that I was a one-issue candidate, right? That all I knew about was housing. You know, but folks don't seem to understand how housing is intersectional with other parts of your life. And I've been doing this for a really long time. And so part of it is like building leadership and building the movement. It was funny when I unseated the 26-year incumbent who's part of the leadership at the State Assembly. There was the magazine, The Real Deal. And it said something like, Rebney didn't believe that things could get worse after the passage of the historic rent laws in 2019, but they just did. And they were referring to the fact that I won my seat. So I think it's really important for folks to know where we stand and know that this agenda is what we ran on because it's something that resonates with so many people.
Jamal, can you speak to what were the challenges running on a homes guarantee? Did you get in any fights with any of these local developers or anyone else?
No, I didn't have any beef, you know, not like my my colleagues here. You know, it's funny. I wonder if maybe they didn't think we had a chance to win. I don't know, but that wasn't the big issue in my particular race. I mean, I was challenging Elliot Engel, who was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who had been super pro-Israel his entire career. So my huge hurdle was the Israel-Palestine conversation. And just, you know, my foreign policy versus his, that was kind of like something I had to answer to every single day of the campaign. So no beef with developers. You know, maybe they didn't think, it was like at the last minute, all of a sudden he got millions of dollars of investments from people from, you know, all over the district, all over the country, all over the world, it seemed like. And they started running these negative ads about some debt that I was in, started sending out negative mailers about my school and this and that. So maybe at the end they started getting nervous and started getting involved, but no real smoke from developers during our campaign.
Jamal, one of my favorite things from your campaign was the idea that they thought saying that you were in debt, like basically every single American, would turn us all against you. And we're all like, yeah, no, we're all in debt, man.
Thousands of dollars in debt. Like it was like $2,000 from 15 years ago that I didn't even know about. Thousands of dollars in debt. And people would see me on the street like, oh, that's all you got? You got 2,000? You're doing good, player. Like that's the reaction I got from people. You're doing all right.
Yeah. So I have a question, which is, you know, this is hard work, both like all the organizing work, running for office. I know it's hard work. It's stressful on y'all. It's stressful on your friends and family. I'm curious, what keeps you grounded in your work as an organizer and as a leader? Maybe even especially in this very trying moment to be like seeking office and winning office.
I mean, I'll start. You know, my daughter, man. You know, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and like when I come home to her, like everything goes away. Like I can't be upset. I can't be depressed. I can't be enraged. I can't be tired. I can't be in pain. Like she literally takes all the pain away. And you know, I hope my wife doesn't get mad at me that I mentioned my daughter before my wife, but you know, my daughter Maya is everything. So for me, it's Maya, it's Marcel, it's Jelani, it's my wife Melissa. Thank God my mom is alive. It's family, man. It's your family and your friends that you know, at least for me, kept me going. And then like this coalition organizer army that was with us as well. You know, 60 grassroots organizations, Justice Dems, Working Families, New York Communities for Change, the Jewish Vote, Make the Road Action, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so you're not alone in this, right? So there's that, but then there's also the self-care aspect of it, you know, so just like your diet and, you know, exercise and getting your sleep and realizing you can't control everything. That's also very powerful. And honestly, man, being a middle school principal really prepares you for, being a middle school principal in the Bronx really prepares you for running for office, man. But it starts with family as my support network.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I want to, you know, I usually mention my toddler, who I have a 2-year-old, but I, you know, one of the things that it's just occurring to me on this call, it's not just occurring to me, but it's just becoming really palpable, which is that one of the things that kept me going to this campaign, one of the principal things was that Rick was running across the river. I just have to say, it was like, you need people, we just happen to be very good friends as well. And we came to our decision to run independently. But what it spoke to was that we had a similar goal. We shared platforms. We shared our Homes Guarantee platform. And I think it just speaks to the fact, and it speaks to this call, which is that, you know, I was really inspired by what was happening in New York. I mean, I knew that, and just knowing that all of this is happening, it was one of the virtues, side virtues of the conditions under which we were running, is that we were often, you know, in touch in various ways, and were forced to be with so much of what was going on elsewhere. And it was an inspiration. And so just being, but very close to home, to have a person running. So I think it's important that we have people just constantly inspiring each other across state lines. I'm so excited that I hope to carry on this conversation, you know, beyond this, that when we're in office, that we're not limited by where we live and what, you know, and all that we're just constantly inspiring each other from our different perches. That was really important to me.
For me, I've been working, advocating, and for tenants and helping them stay in their homes, you know, for a little over a decade. And to me, they've kept me very grounded. The fact that they've, you know, they're much more knowledgeable about their rights. They're standing up to their landlords. They're helping their neighbors. It's also those thousands and thousands of tenants that I wasn't able to help, right? That live in unregulated units whose evictions I couldn't stop. But it's also like the movement and the tenants that I've met throughout the years, from Rockaway to Rochester, you know, all those tenants that have been part of the movement have been very, very inspiring. And the other thing that keeps me grounded is my daughter. She's 20 and could care less about what I was able to accomplish and what all the press is about. So,
Rick, how about you?
Yeah, I'll add just to add some a little more background to what Nikhil shared. Actually, in the beginning of us running, we would have a weekly check-in where we would get together and play basketball. So we'd play one-on-one basketball, Raquel. Yeah, Raquel would go every week, and we would just we would like shoot around and just chop it up and like really share and like support one another in this really terrifying choice that we made. I'll let Nikhil answer the question about who won. Hopefully once this is all over, we can have a Homes Guarantee pickup game. It'll be great. National, we can do East versus West. It'll be, oh man. But it really was the important, an important thing for me. And even when it got to COVID, like I can remember calling Nikhil like the week before COVID really started to escalate, and she's been like, yeah, it seems like this quarantine thing's gonna be kind of real. I don't know. Maybe we should start to like really follow this and see what kind of decisions we'll have to make. And then the following week, like I called him like 4 days later, and it felt like it'd been half a year. And I was like, this has changed completely. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna respond? How are we gonna show up in this moment? Just like being able to voice those anxieties with one another and create that space for each other was really critical. And then just being clear about my stake in the work. I think I'm the only one that doesn't have a kid, but I would eventually like to start a family. But I can't do that if I have struggling public schools in my community. I can't buy a home to start a family in if we have property taxes that are inaccessible for working class people. My stake in my future and the future of the people in my community that I care about is tied up into this work. So part of what grounds me is knowing that I don't have a choice. This is like do or die for us. Lives are at stake.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Tara, like I just want to really appreciate those answers. I think that we've been trained, because so many of our elected officials don't really represent us, to think of them as these sort of totally sanitized images and robots who just work in Washington, and we can't relate to them in any way. So hearing y'all talk about other community organizations, your family, your partners, your comrades, playing basketball, all things that folks on this call can really relate to, just really heartens me, and it lets me know that y'all are really going to fight with us, because y'all are us. So I really appreciate that answer.
Thanks, Maurice. Totally real. And the mystery remains who's winning these games between Nikhil and Rick, but stick around to the second version of this call. We will answer that question. So now I'm going to take a couple of questions from the Q&A box. The audience has been participating like mad over here. We've got a question from our comrade in Chicago named David Zoltan. And David says, here in Chicago, less than 1% of all housing is both accessible and affordable. How will you work to ensure that people with disabilities can finally live in community as we were promised by the Americans with Disabilities Act 30 years ago this month?
Yeah, so when we talk about federal policy and we're talking about Homes Guarantee, we're talking about accessible housing. We're talking about a housing in alignment with a Green New Deal. And we're talking about 12 million new social homes that are stabilized, that are affordable, and provide everyone with part ownership. So that's a federal policy that I'm gonna sign on with as soon as I get to Congress. It's Ilhan Omar's bill. Elizabeth Warren also has a bill similar to it that's very strong. But in those 12 million new social housing units, they will definitely be accessible. They will definitely be affordable across the country.
Anyone else want to jump in on this? Accessibility and housing?
Yeah, I think I'll just be brief, and I think this again goes back to the importance of co-governance, right? I mean, we can develop, we are committed to developing accessible, affordable housing, but to do that, like we actually have to be in relationship with the disabled community, and think about like, all right, what is the strategizing we need to do? What is the kind of organization we have to build to make housing not just affordable, but also accessible? So I think, again, it just calls back to the need for real accountability and co-governance for all of us with the communities we're representing.
Stephen has a really good question in the Q&A box as a refresher for everyone. Stephen says, when people get a chance, could you explain what you mean by social housing? So not to put you on the spot, but Nikhil, I feel like you can answer this question. What do you mean when you say social housing?
Oh yeah. So I mean, what I don't know if Daniel Aldana Cohen is on this call, but I mean he is one of the lead writers for who kind of clued me into all this. He's a Homes Guarantee policy team person, but a lot of the inspiration is something distinct from what public housing has been in the United States, which is that it isn't like a means tested thing, but it's actually just municipally built or federally built or whatever housing that is for all. And so the idea is not that it's meant to be means tested or meant to be housing for people just under a certain income. I mean, the point of it is to expand the amount of housing for everyone, and to ultimately take the amount of housing that is private off the market, so that it is actually social and public in a true sense. So that's how I think of it, and I think the other thing that's key to it is that it is, part of it that's key to the Homes Guarantee is that it's both social and green, and like that is low carbon and passive, or no carbon rather, so passive, so that it doesn't emit, it doesn't create emissions, it doesn't rely on fossil fuels. So this is part. I mean, which is also social in a kind of deeper sense, in the sense that it is guaranteeing our society for a much longer period of time. But when I think of social, it's that it's not. It is housing that is taken off the market.
Anyone have a different answer to that? Social housing? I will just add in, I had an amazing one-on-one with a leader from Reclaim Philadelphia today. And we were talking about how so much of the vision for the Homes Guarantee and social housing is also about changing our relationship to one another, quite fundamentally. Because in America, we have this whole mythology around the single family home and the white picket fence. And that further entrenches this narrative that we kind of have to go it on our own in this country. And the notion of social housing is a notion that breaks down that mythology. And it allows us to consider a different relationship to one another, to our community, a different relationship that's really rooted in solidarity. So I think I think Nikhil had a really beautiful answer to that. And that's one that's kind of blossoming in my head as of today. So we have a couple questions, one from Oksana in the chat, and one from the Q&A box as well about homelessness. And I think this is a really important one because often in conversations about housing, we don't necessarily talk about the unhoused. And in the vision for the Homes Guarantee, we've tried to do our best to knit together our analysis about what needs to happen in terms of housing policy, but also in terms of a dedication to ending homelessness. So I want to just open it up and hear from you all, like what's the way in which you think about those two things together? What do you think is the path towards ending homelessness once and for all?
So yeah, I'll jump in. I just had a conversation about this today with a progressive developer, or someone who calls himself a progressive developer. But what he had to say was interesting. So Yonkers has a huge homeless population, and what he was saying was he's looking to develop housing which would allow the formerly homeless to pay 30% of whatever their public subsidies are toward rent. But the other part of it is also putting them giving them the additional resources that they require, right? So oftentimes the homeless population requires like mental health supports and also other healthcare needs. So within the housing spaces that he was talking about developing, and I thought this was pretty cool, provide them with healthcare and additional social supports that they may need. I read a story recently that discussed how 50% of homeless suffer from some form of brain trauma, or traumatic brain injury. And that's an issue that we have to deal with as well. So it's not just housing the homeless, it's also providing healthcare supports that they need as well, and putting them on a pathway towards work and other things.
Other folks?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think it is about like how do we address houselessness, but also as connected to that, like how do we start to reinforce and expand the safety net, which is so related to addressing homelessness and houselessness. In Philly, you know, we're dealing with a thing with one, public housing is not really incentivized. I know someone in the chat had talked about the federal voucher program and how complex and difficult of a process that is, and it really does not incentivize public housing. So I think we have to have clearer initiatives to make that a path for developing housing that's affordable. We have to maintain and defend the public housing that already exists. There's one of the few housing complexes that's left in my neighborhood has actually been under threat of being shut down. It's one of the few high-rise apartment units in my area. And right now they're trying to sell it off to be developed into private units. So we have to defend those. But then when it goes to the question of addressing the other root causes, right? Systemic poverty, the fact that many people are dealing with either health issues or mental trauma, giving people, like treating drug use and drug addiction as a health crisis and not criminalizing it, which is often what causes some of the cycles around the criminalization of poverty that we see. I mean, many times when you actually talk with houseless people, one of those things and one of those issues is why they ended up losing their home. So to me, if we're gonna address homelessness, we have to prioritize clear, accessible paths to housing, but also let's tackle and take on the things that are causing people to fall beneath the cracks in the first place. So addressing systemic poverty, healthcare, housing, mental health treatment, all of that.
Yeah, if we ever really want to end homelessness, then the people in position of power really need to believe that housing is a human right. In New York City, we're paying something like $3,000 to house someone who's homeless in a shelter in a hotel, when it's much easier to just pay their rent and stabilize their housing insecurity.
I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like we lost Marcella for a second. Oops. Okay. Over to you, Nikhil. Any answer on
Housing units empty?
Oh.
That we can actually give and house people that are homeless. Something that I had kind of brought up before, we use eminent domain to take people's homes and build a stadium for one of the worst playing basketball teams, right? Why can't we use eminent domain to preserve housing and to take it from these developers while it's sitting empty and actually house people that need it?
Shots fired. I love it. I love the extent to which we're always finding ourselves talking about basketball in the Homes Guarantee context. This is how I know I'm among my people. Nikhil, what's your answer? What's the connection between housing and homelessness, and what's the way that you're thinking about prioritizing these things as a state legislator?
I mean, I don't have too much to add. I think Rick, Marcella, and Jamal are totally on point. I mean, I think fundamentally we're all speaking towards like a housing first direction for with the unhoused, but I think it's more, we have a broader conception of what that housing is and like what is involved in that housing and what kind of supports are needed. But I think it's just that like we have to think about that, like we have to believe that housing is a human right, that we should guarantee housing to everyone, and that housing is the solution for people who do not have it. And so I agree with everything that's been said.
Absolutely. I think something either Marcella or someone else is saying is really ringing true for me. This idea that I think the calculations tell us that it would cost like $100 billion to end homelessness today. We have $100 billion. The government literally just printed trillions of dollars. The lack is not for money, it's the lack of political will to actually take this seriously. And the sick reality is that people are actually profiting from homelessness continuing, right? People are profiting from the status quo continuing, and that's actually why the problem has not been solved, not because it's unsolvable. So there's another key piece of the dreaming that I've heard from each of you, which is about a vision for a green homes guarantee. And Nikhil, you and Jamal have spoken about this a little bit already tonight, but I'm curious to hear from all of you about why it's important to you personally to connect these two visions for a Green New Deal and a homes guarantee. I myself find them to be extremely compatible and connected, but I want to hear from you, like, why is this important? Why is it urgent that we prioritize not just a homes guarantee, but a green homes guarantee?
I can start. I think for me, this really starts to get into the issue of environmental racism, which is a thing that's weighs heavy on my mind in my city, in our city here in Philly. The fact that you had decades of practices where you'd have dirty energy gas plants adjacent to low-income Black and brown housing, and what that means for the health of those people, what it means for the dwellings of those people. So on one end, I'm invested in addressing housing and addressing environmental policy, environmental justice, because to me, you can't actually address environmental racism without doing both. And when it comes to the intersection of those two, I want to make sure that we have affordable housing, but also that it's affordable, healthy housing, so that we can undo the fact that a third of the youth in Philadelphia have asthma. So that we can undo the fact that a refinery exploded in Southwest Philadelphia and caused, and then the cleanup wasn't taken care of appropriately for weeks because it was situated next to a working class Black neighborhood. A green housing to me means not only making sure that we prioritize this vision around a homes guarantee, but making sure that the infrastructure that we develop actually cares about the lives of those people, isn't created with shoddy materials, is actually promoting energy efficiency and the well-being of people. Because it's not, housing is a human right, but so is clean water, clean air, health. And so that, to me, that's why I'm invested in bringing both of those things in.
Other folks, Green New Deal, homes guarantee, why are these connected? Why is it urgent? Jamal, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, the Green New Deal. So, our goal is net zero carbon emissions by 2030. So any new manufacturing, whether it's housing or otherwise, or public schools for that matter, and I know Nikhil has a great Green New Deal for public schools platform, needs to be in alignment with net zero carbon emissions. So, to reiterate what Rick said, clean air, clean water, health, these are human rights. And any new manufacturing needs to be in alignment with a Green New Deal and our goal for net zero carbon emissions, both domestically and abroad. Because there's a climate catastrophe happening all over the world, and our military industrial complex is a big part of that. So one of my critiques of my opponent was around his consistent support of the military industrial complex and contributing to the climate catastrophe all over the world. So as we look to rebuild the world, a world that works for everyone, every new construction needs to be in alignment with our net zero carbon emissions goal, and we need to retrofit older buildings in alignment with clean, renewable energy. So absolutely, this is all under the umbrella of a Green New Deal, federal jobs guarantee as well, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I'm going to move us along to the last question that I have for you all tonight. This does not come from anyone in the Q&A box or the chat, but I'm seeing all these names on the participant list, and I'm recognizing the names of a lot of grassroots leaders who I have the pleasure and honor of knowing personally, and who are some of the most radical, most visionary, boldest people I've ever met in my life. And what I want to ask you as a final question is, what advice do you have for them so that they can go become homes guarantee candidates and start filling up the seats around you in the halls of Congress and your state legislature? What is your main advice for the people listening to you speak who are maybe calling in from their public housing building, calling in from their building that's falling apart with mold on the wall, calling in while they're also feeding their kids or they're worried about their impending eviction court case. I want you to speak to the folks who are listening right now on the line and tell them how they can envision a future where they're actually the panelist on this call after successfully winning a campaign on a Homes Guarantee platform.
If I can start, just as an example of my story, I was somebody who got displaced from a home that I shared with my family for over 30 years. Understanding that the representation of government needs to be reflective of the people. Understanding that it's those lived experiences that we have that are so important for someone who's in position to make decisions that are going to impact our families and our communities for generations. And, you know, as an immigrant, Indigenous woman of color, we're breaking barriers. And in order for others to take on this path, to believe that they can achieve the success of getting to public office, some of us are going to have to pave the way. And so we're doing this together, and we're building the leadership within our movement, and we're supporting each other. And, you know, it's possible.
You know, I'm just deeply inspired. I just want to say that, I mean, for me, what was important was trying to understand, you know, what my animus was. In a way, I spent a lot of time just believing, I think, that the housing system was wrong and knowing it was wrong, but not knowing why I thought it was wrong and where that was coming from. And, you know, we all talked about our stake earlier on. It took me a long time to get to that and to understand that my stake was my stake. I mean, it was real, and it was political, and it was part of the source. It was why I was able to find solidarity with people whose stories maybe seemed different, or I would hear them and I think, well, like, that story is different from mine. But then I had to hear my own story first, and hear the politics in it, and hear the story of housing in this country, in countries across the world as well, because I'm connected to other countries. I mean, but just to hear that and then know that I could act on that basis. And that was one of the things, to go back to another question, that was one of the things that sustained me, is like, but you need a source of sustenance. What is it? You have beliefs, but where do those beliefs come from? What is the thing that sustains those beliefs? And that thing is fundamentally deep inside you. And when you get to the bottom of yourself, it's not just yourself, it's other people. And that's the meaning of solidarity. And that's the basis for why someone should run for office, and what sustains you when you run.
Rick, what's your advice?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that kept me going, and that I would offer to people that are considering this decision, is to believe in yourself. Like, really, that might sound a little corny, but we have all the things we've talked about. Housing insecurity, poverty, racism. These are also all the same forces that tell us that electoral politics, the political arena, is for someone else. It is for someone smarter. It is for someone richer, whiter. It is not for me. It is not for me to engage in the political process, to actually impose my will in the political process, to have my voice heard in the political process. And that is a big part of why a lot of our communities are disenfranchised, because these systems have tried to instill these narratives that we are not enough to step up and take leadership. So I have to constantly remind myself that, like, I'm enough, that we are enough. And the advice I would offer to everyone on this call is that you are enough too, and that you deserve to take up space. You deserve to have your agenda heard, to be brought to the table. And it is a radical act for us to remember that and to believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, we need you. The world needs you to run for office. And if you're not the kind of person who would run for office, help someone else who's running for office. And for me, it was really deep in my gut, and it was like very intuitive. for me to take this leap, not really understanding what I was getting myself into. And there's a lot of fear with that, and anxiety and uncertainty. But if your what's the quote? If your voice, even if your voice shakes, you should say it anyway. And it's like that level of pushing through that anxiety or fear. And again, not just when it comes to running for office, but when it comes to supporting someone else that's running for office. The world needs your story. The world needs your experience. The political system is rotten at the moment, and we need to heal it and restore it in a way that it works for everyone. And, we're in the middle of a movement. I mean, we're in the middle of a movement, like the movements that I read about in textbooks in school. We're living through one right now, and we're a part of it. And it's incredibly humbling to be a part of this. And I feel very fortunate to be in this position. But when I look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, what's happening in Philly, what's happening here in New York, like the type of people that are running for office in 10 years, like Congress and state houses are going to look like us, like completely like us. And then we'll have the opportunity to make incredible transformative change. So, we need you and the world needs you. So continue to do what you're doing. And if you feel it in your gut, definitely run for office.
Ah, gorgeous. We are enough. I love that. I'm going to be chanting that in the face of every grassroots leader in KC Tenants until Janae is our mayor and Tiana is our HUD secretary and all the rest of it. We are enough. Well, thank you so much, Jamal, Rick, Marcella, Nikhil, for spending some time with us on the panel. Stick around if you want to. We've obviously got some closing words, and I might have another special song up my sleeve. We know that it's going to take a lot to win a Homes Guarantee, but especially after hearing you all reflect on your journey and talk so deeply and openly with us tonight, I believe more than ever that we're going to win it. Together, we will win a Homes Guarantee. And now I'm going to pass it along to Tess, who's actually one of those people that Jamal just shouted out, one of those people who might not be the candidate themselves, but is part of the movement that actually makes a movement candidate and a Homes Guarantee candidate a possibility. So Tess, over to you. And Tess is going to ground us in what it's actually going to take to win both now and tomorrow.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, everyone. My name is Tess Cairns. I use she, her pronouns, and I was a regional field organizer for Nikhil. First, I want to say thanks for inviting me to speak with you and for everyone who shared their visions tonight. Like, it was really inspiring, super inspired. So for me, being part of Nikhil's campaign was just like a really empowering experience that I know, like I shared with many of you who are on this call right now and a lot of others who aren't on the call, but especially in the midst of a global pandemic, fighting for a candidate who is demanding a Homes Guarantee in Pennsylvania gave me an outlet to express the hope and the vision that I have for my community and for Philadelphia. And that's what I want to talk about today, how organizing our communities allows us to bring our hopes and visions and to transform them into something that's tangible and real, and that makes a difference in our lives and the lives of our neighbors. So the first senatorial district, where Nikhil is now the senator-elect, holds the wealthiest and the poorest parts of Philadelphia and also of Pennsylvania as a whole. We have Rittenhouse Square, where there's million-dollar apartments and expensive restaurants. We also have Kensington and Allegheny, which is the opioid epicenter of the Eastern Seaboard, where many residents live in homes without electricity or access to clean water, and where gentrification is rampant and Black and brown neighbors are being forced out of the homes that have been in their families for generations, as y'all talked about. We also hold the Parkway, where there's luxury apartments that look over a beautiful and strong community of houseless people who are demanding that the city is held accountable for decades of racist and classist policies. And then we also hold parts of South Philly, where there's old row homes that are collapsing. There's just some row homes that collapsed a few days ago. Right next to newly remodeled homes that are shoddily built. I live in one of those shoddily built South Philly row homes. And they're constructed so that a few wealthy real estate developers can get richer. And now we have a self-proclaimed democratic socialist who is fighting for a homes guarantee so that all our neighbors have access to the housing that they deserve. Throughout Nikhil's campaign, we organized our neighbors to make over 450,000 voter contact attempts. We provided mutual aid. We informed about the upcoming election, but most importantly, we asked every single person to share what is at stake for them right now and how their state connects to their vision for their community. We know that our values were more common than we sometimes feel in a world run by a cold capitalist machine. We know that everyone wants a world where their families are loved, fed, and sheltered. It was our responsibility to connect with that feeling of solidarity and to organize it so that these visions and hopes for our communities were transformed into real, tangible power. This is how we organized over 500 unique volunteers, many of whom showed up every single weekend to make calls with us and to fight for the world that we know we all deserve. We've seen candidates like Kendra Brooks, Rick, Nikhil, Marcella, Jamal, who have brought together a broad coalition of labor unions, advocacy groups, and movement activists to take city and statewide power and bring our values and our visions to the table. But they cannot do it alone. When Kendra Brooks introduced a resolution on her first day of office as city council member calling for hearings on rent control, the movement family that elected her into office was still there cheering her on. Our elected officials are only as strong as the movement fighting alongside them. And when we use our collective power and raise our voices to show them and their colleagues that we are still out here, still fighting and still transforming our hope into a new reality for ourselves and our communities, achieving a homes guarantee becomes not just a dream, but a necessity. When our elected officials introduce a homes guarantee platform on their first day in office, we will be there with them to make sure that everyone knows that our movement family will not stop fighting until every one of us has a safe place to sleep at night. I want to take a moment to lift up the work that Sterling and so many other comrades have been doing to liberate our land and fight for access to affordable housing in Philadelphia. Sterling spoke at the beginning of the panel if you missed him, but I was fortunate enough to spend a few nights last week at the protest encampment, and it's a beautiful community of Black and Brown Philadelphians that are really, like, to me, like embodying the vision of community that protects, cares for, and respects each other. Those comrades are at the epicenter of the fight that continues past the ballot box, and they're a model for what it means to have a sustainable movement building towards a home guarantee. We demand a homes guarantee, and we can win this fight, because a world where we have somewhere safe to go at the end of the day is our hope transformed. Hope is fundamental for us to thrive. Hope is stronger than fear and gives people permission to dream bigger than themselves. And when we organize our communities and demand a homes guarantee that we know we deserve, we will win. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Tess. We're so glad that you were able to join us for the call tonight. Now we need everyone to join us in action. So it's so important, and we've heard how important it is that we have elected officials in positions of power to move our agenda. Next Thursday, People's Action and Take Action Minnesota will be hosting a phone bank to re-elect Homes Guarantee candidate Representative Ilhan Omar, who has been a true fighter for people and racial justice and housing justice. In the face of the pandemic, she introduced the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act to cancel all rent and mortgage payments nationwide during the duration of the pandemic. As of the first of the month, it's only a few days away, and millions are unable to pay rent. It's even more crucial that Representative Omar is re-elected. She's in a really tight primary, tighter than it should be because her opponent has been raising big money. Join us next Thursday, July 30th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time to talk to voters across the state of Minnesota about why we need to elect Representative Ilhan Omar. And if it's your first time phone banking, don't worry about it. We've got a training at the beginning of the evening, and we're gonna put the link in the chat so you can sign up to join us. It might be tempting to say I'll sign up later, but we need everyone to take 2 seconds to sign up right now, together on this call. The primary is August 11th, and we cannot afford to wait. Representative Omar has been such an ally to us in the Homes Guarantee movement, and so we need you to, right now, get on the website and sign up. So hopefully folks are signing up right now. We have a duty to make sure that the folks who've held leadership and the folks who've been in co-governance with us stay in office. And we know that, you know, Ilhan, AOC, and many others represent not only their districts, but they represent the movement. And that makes them targets for the opposition. So again, I hope folks are signing up. And thank you so much for doing that. Now, one additional ask we have for all of you tonight is to sign up for our August 3rd Rise Up 2020 Get Out to Vote launch. We know that in order to win a Homes Guarantee, we need to elect more champions like Jamal, Nikhil, Marcella, and Rick up and down the ballot. Do you think we need more Homes Guarantee candidates and movement politics organizers elected in office? Let's see it in the chat if you agree. Chat's been lit all day, so it better get even more lit right now. That's right, I totally agree. We're just about 100 days from November 3rd election, and People's Action is launching a massive Get Out the Vote for our movement politics candidates starting August 3rd. It will be a great opportunity to hear from our member organizations about the movement politics programs we're running and plug into volunteer opportunities. Let's take a minute for everyone to sign up. I'm gonna pop the link in the chat again. And again, it's important that we sign up now. Don't say you'll do it later, because as soon as you get off this call, who knows what you're gonna do? Wake up tomorrow, forget about it. So please, get on the line right now. The link is in the chat. All right, and thank you for committing to these actions. I'm gonna send it over to my comrade Divya to close us out for the evening.
Awesome. Thank you, John, and thank you to our incredible and super dope candidates, Jamal Bowman, Nikhil Saval, Marcella Matenis, Rick Krajewski, and to all our other speakers, and to all of you who spent almost 2 hours with us on a Thursday night after I'm sure we've been on a lot of other Zooms. Incredible. Love your commitment to a Homes Guarantee. You'll receive an email from us tomorrow morning to follow up from this call. You can find us on Twitter at #CancelRent and #HomesGuarantee. And we'll see you back for another field call, same time on August 6th, our next Homes Guarantee Thursday. Stay safe, y'all, and take care. And I think it's time for another dance party.
I like diamonds, I like stunning, I like shining, I like $1,000,000 deals. Where's my pen? Bitch, I'm signing. I like those Balenciagas, the ones that look like socks. I like going to the Tula, I put rocks all in my watch. I like texts from my exes when they want a second chance. I like proving niggas wrong, I do what they say I can't. They call me Cardi, Cardi, banging body, spicy mommy, hot tamale, hotter than a Somali. Virgo, Ferrari, hop up the stoop, jump in the coupe, big dip on top of the roof, flexing on bitches as hard as I can, eating halal, driving a lamb. So that bitch, I'm sorry though, got my coins like Mario. Yeah, they call me Cardi B, I run this shit like cardio. I'm in district in the chain. Certified, you know I'm gang, 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 gang. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's so handsome, what's his name? Beat it up like pinata. Tell the job to close the curtains. That bitch make you nervous.
Chambean, chambean, pero no jalan. Tú compras todas las Jordan, a mí me las regalan. I spend in the club, what you have in the bank. This is the new religion bank, el Latino gang. Yeah, trato de hacer dieta, pero es que en el closet tengo mucha grasa. Ya mudé la Gucci pa' dentro de casa, yeah. Cabrón, a ti no te conocen ni en plaza. El diablo me llama, pero Jesucristo me abraza. Guerrero como Eddie, que viva la raza, yeah. Me gustan boricua, me gustan cubana. Me gusta el acento de la colombiana. Como me ve el culo la dominicana. Lo rico que me chinga la venezolana. Andamos activos, perico, pim, pim. Billetes de 100 en el maletín. Que retumbe el bajo, Bobby Valentín, yeah. Aquí prohibido amar, dile charitín. Que per pico le tengo claritín. Yo llego a la disco y se forma el motín.
electric in this